The massive Krillian warship dropped out of hyperspace like a metal mountain appearing from nothing. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge, his forearms crossed behind his back as he watched the blue planet grow larger on the main screen. Earth, such a simple name for what his scouts promised would be an even simpler conquest. "Report," Vextar commanded, his voice echoing through the bridge with the authority of someone who had conquered 17 star systems. Science Officer Thys tapped her console with clawed fingers. "The planet shows all signs of a Class 3 civilization. Admiral, they use chemical rockets, split atoms for energy, and send radio waves through space. Their most advanced weapons appear to be fusion bombs." Vextar's mandibles clicked in what passed for Krillian laughter. "Fusion bombs, how quaint. Do they still hit each other with sticks as well?" "Our cultural analysis suggests they may have moved past that stage approximately 10,000 of their years ago, sir." The Admiral turned to face the tactical display, showing Earth's pathetic defenses. A few hundred primitive aircraft, some submarines that moved slower than a Krillian child could swim, and space stations that looked like they were held together with metal cables and hope. "How many ships in their space fleet?" Vextar asked. "They appear to have none, Admiral. Their orbital presence consists entirely of communication devices and observation platforms." This drew another clicking laugh from the Admiral. In his 3 centuries of military service, he had never encountered a species so helplessly unprepared for contact with galactic civilization. Most worlds at least managed to build a few armed spacecraft before the hegemony found them. Earth's inhabitants seemed content to stay trapped in their gravity well like insects in a jar. "Sir," Communications Officer Zan spoke up from his station, "we're receiving transmissions from the planet. Multiple sources, all broadcasting on primitive electromagnetic frequencies." "Let me hear their surrender," Vextar said, settling into his command chair. The bridge speakers crackled to life with the sound of human voices speaking in dozens of different languages. Thys quickly activated the translation matrix, and suddenly, the chaotic babble became understandable. "Emergency broadcast from the Global Defense Council. Unknown vessels have appeared in Earth orbit. All military forces are being placed on highest alert. The President will address the world in 1 hour." Vextar listened for several minutes before waving for silence. "They're not surrendering, they're organizing." "It appears so, sir," Thys confirmed. "Our long-range sensors detect increased activity at their military installations. Primitive aircraft are taking off from bases across the planet, and their naval vessels are leaving ports." The Admiral stood and walked to the main view screen, studying the planet below. From orbit, Earth looked peaceful enough. Blue oceans, white clouds, green and brown continents. It was actually quite beautiful in a simple way. It would make a decent agricultural world once the current inhabitants were relocated to work camps. "Admiral," Zan called out, "we're receiving a direct transmission. It's being broadcast on multiple frequencies and appears to be directed at us specifically." "Put it through." The view screen flickered, and suddenly Vextar was looking at a human, female. She appeared to be middle-aged by their standards, with graying hair and lines around her eyes that suggested either wisdom or worry. She wore what looked like formal clothing, though by Krillian standards it was laughably primitive. "This is President Chen of the United Earth Government," the human said. "We know you can understand our language through your translation systems. We request the opportunity to speak with your commanding officer." Vextar gestured to Zan, who opened the communication channel. "I am Admiral Vextar of the Krillian hegemony. You may consider this your formal notice of conquest. Your world now belongs to the hegemony. You have 1 standard day to surrender unconditionally, or we will take your planet by force." President Chen's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Was it fear? Resignation? Vextar couldn't tell with these alien features. "Admiral Vextar," she said carefully, "we appreciate your directness. However, we request 24 hours to consider your terms and prepare our response." "You misunderstand, human. These are not terms. This is a statement of fact. Your surrender is inevitable. The time we give you is merely to spare unnecessary loss of life." "Nevertheless," Chen continued, We request 24 hours. Surely a civilization as advanced as yours can afford to wait one day. Vextar considered this. It was unusual for a primitive species to negotiate at all. Most either surrendered immediately or fought back with whatever pathetic weapons they possessed. This request for time was interesting. Very well. You have 24 of your hours. Use them wisely. The transmission ended, and President Chen's face disappeared from the screen. Sir, Thais said, studying her instruments, I'm detecting some unusual readings from the planet's surface. What kind of readings? Energy signatures that don't match their known technology. They're very faint, but they seem to be coming from multiple locations across the planet. Vextar waved dismissively. Probably they're primitive power plants running at higher capacity. Fear makes even the most backward species work harder. But as the hours passed, the readings grew stronger. Deep beneath Earth's surface, in facilities that had been hidden for thousands of years, ancient systems were slowly coming online. President Chen stood in one such facility, 3 miles below the mountains of Colorado. The chamber around her was vast, filled with technology that would have been incomprehensible to most humans. Crystalline structures pulsed with soft light, and displays showed information in symbols that predated human written language by millions of years. Status report, Chen said to the technicians around her. All primary systems are responding, Madam President, replied Dr. Sarah Vasquez, the head of what the public knew as the Archaeological Division. The defense grid will be fully operational in 18 hours. And our orbital platforms? Still in temporal displacement. The Krillian sensors aren't advanced enough to detect them. Chen nodded, walking over to a display that showed the alien fleet in orbit. 12 massive warships, each one capable of destroying a city with a single blast. To any normal civilization, it would be an overwhelming force. But Earth's civilization was far from normal. Have the other sites reported in? All installations are coming online on schedule. The Pacific Array will be ready first, followed by the Antarctic Deep Station and the Sahara Complex. Chen studied the readings on the displays. After 300 years of hiding, of pretending to be a primitive species struggling with basic technology, the time had come to reveal the truth. The Krillian hegemony had been expanding through this section of the galaxy for centuries, conquering world after world. They had grown arrogant, assuming that any species they encountered would be inferior to them. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. Above them, Admiral Vextar was growing impatient. The human deadline still had 12 hours remaining, but he was considering attacking early. His fleet had detected no new defenses, no hidden weapons, nothing that suggested these primitives could pose any real threat. Admiral, Thais called out, the energy readings from the planet are continuing to increase. I'm also detecting some unusual gravitational fluctuations. Gravitational fluctuations? Very minor ones, sir. Probably related to their planet's natural magnetic field. These worlds with single large moons often have unusual characteristics. Vextar nodded absently. He was studying tactical displays showing the positions of Earth's military forces. Their aircraft were pathetically slow, their ships were barely capable of leaving their atmosphere, and their ground forces used projectile weapons that would barely scratch Krillian armor. Sir, Zan reported, we're receiving multiple transmissions from the human government. They're requesting extensions, offering tribute, asking for negotiations. Ignore them all. When their time expires, we begin the bombardment. But down on Earth, President Chen was not preparing to surrender. She was standing in a control room that had been waiting for this moment for millennia. Around her, the descendants of humanity's greatest civilization prepared to end their long masquerade. All stations report ready, Dr. Vasquez announced. We can begin the awakening sequence at your command. Chen looked at the screens showing the Krillian fleet, then at the readings from installations all over the planet. In a few hours, the galaxy would remember why humanity had once been feared. Across 1 million stars. Begin the sequence, she ordered. It's time to come home. Deep beneath the Earth's crust, machines that had slept for ages began to stir. The planet's magnetic field shifted in patterns that would soon become impossible to ignore. Ocean currents changed direction as ancient systems drew power from the planet's core itself. Admiral Vextar had conquered many worlds, but he had never conquered one that was about to fight back with the fury of an entire planet. The countdown to humanity's revelation had begun. The 24 hours passed like a slow countdown to disaster, at least from Admiral Vextar's perspective. The Krillian fleet maintained its position in high orbit, their massive ships casting shadows over Earth's major cities. The Admiral expected the humans to surrender at any moment, but instead, their radio chatter had increased dramatically. They're actually mobilizing their military. Communications officer Zan reported with what sounded like disbelief. Aircraft from every continent are taking off. Their naval vessels are forming defensive positions around their major population centers. Admiral Vextar clicked his mandibles in amusement. Show me these fearsome defenders. The main screen shifted to display feeds from the fleet's observation drones. The images showed human fighter jets, sleek by their standards but laughably primitive compared to Krillian technology. They moved at barely a tenth the speed of a Krillian interceptor and appeared to be armed with simple projectile weapons and chemical explosives. What about their space capabilities? Vextar asked. They appear to have launched several of their primitive rockets, sir. Chemical propulsion systems that barely achieve orbital velocity. Our sensors indicate they're carrying small payloads, probably observation satellites. Science Officer Thys looked up from her console with an expression that might have been confusion. Admiral, there's something odd about their military deployment patterns. Explain. They're positioning their forces as if they expect to fight us in their atmosphere and on their planet's surface. But our standard procedure is to bombard from orbit until they surrender. These positions would be useless against orbital bombardment. Vextar considered this. Perhaps they don't understand orbital bombardment. They've never fought a space-capable enemy before. That's possible, sir. But their positioning suggests they expect close combat. Look at these formations. The tactical display showed human military units spread across the globe. Aircraft carriers positioned near coastlines, ground forces dug into defensive positions around cities, and missile installations that seemed designed for surface-to-air combat rather than orbital defense. They're fighting the last war, Vextar concluded. They probably expect us to land troops and fight them on the ground like some primitive invasion force. The bridge crew clicked their approval of this assessment. It made sense. A species that had never encountered galactic civilization would naturally assume that space combat worked like their own primitive conflicts. Time remaining? Vextar asked. 4 hours until their deadline expires, Admiral. Very well. Begin preliminary bombardment targeting. Choose their most significant military installations first. A few demonstrations should convince them to surrender. But as the Krillian fleet prepared for what they expected to be a brief and one-sided engagement, something was happening on Earth that their sensors couldn't detect. Deep underground, in facilities that existed in carefully shielded spaces, the final preparations were being made. President Chen stood in the primary command center, watching displays that showed information no human government was supposed to possess. Real-time tracking of every ship in the Krillian fleet, complete analysis of their weapon systems, and detailed information about their shield frequencies. The masquerade has held perfectly, Dr. Vasquez reported. They still think we're a primitive species with chemical rockets and fusion bombs. What about our orbital platforms? All 47 deep space stations are still in temporal displacement. The Krillians have no idea they're there. Chen nodded. The temporal displacement fields were one of humanity's most carefully guarded secrets. To outside observers, the platforms simply didn't exist in normal space-time. They could maintain this state indefinitely, waiting for the moment when they would phase back into reality. Surface installations? All primary defense nodes are online. The Pacific Array is drawing power directly from the planet's core. The Antarctic Station has established quantum links with our moon-based facilities. The Sahara Complex reports full system integration. On the main display, Chen could see the Krillian fleet making final preparations for bombardment. Their targeting systems were locking onto human military bases, completely unaware that these bases were just empty shells designed to look threatening to primitive sensors. "They're about to learn their first lesson," Chen said quietly. High above, Admiral Vextar was growing impatient with the humans' apparent inability to understand their hopeless situation. "Open a channel to the planet," he ordered. President Chen's image appeared on the screen again, but this time she was clearly in some kind of military facility. Primitive computer displays were visible behind her, along with what looked like human military personnel. "Admiral Vextar," she said, "we need more time to evacuate our civilian populations from the areas your ships are targeting." "There will be no evacuations," Vextar replied coldly. "You have 2 hours remaining to surrender unconditionally. After that, we will begin bombardment of your military installations. Surrender, and your civilians will be spared." "And if we surrender, what happens to humanity?" "Your species will be relocated to work colonies where you can contribute to the hegemony's prosperity. It is a generous offer." Chen was quiet for a long moment, and Vextar thought he saw resignation in her expression. "We need to discuss this among our leadership," she said finally. "Please, just give us until the original deadline." Vextar cut the transmission without responding. These humans were all the same in the end. They would fight until they realized how outmatched they were, then beg for mercy. "Sir," Thiz called out, "I'm still getting those unusual energy readings from the planet. They're stronger now, and I'm detecting patterns that don't match any known natural phenomena." "Such as?" "Electromagnetic fluctuations and perfect geometric patterns. Gravitational anomalies that seem to be artificially generated, and the planet's magnetic field is shifting in ways that shouldn't be possible." Vextar walked over to Thiz's station and looked at the readings himself. The patterns were indeed unusual, but he had seen strange things before when primitive species panicked. They're probably overloading their power systems in desperation, he decided. Fear makes species do irrational things, but the truth was far different. Across Earth's surface, installations that had been hidden for millennia were coming fully online. In the depths of the Pacific Ocean, a structure the size of a continent was drawing power from the planet's molten core. In Antarctica, beneath miles of ice, quantum computers that processed information faster than light were calculating targeting solutions for weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics. The humans weren't panicking. They were preparing. 1 hour remaining, Zan announced. Admiral Vextar stood and walked to the center of the bridge. Around him, his crew made final preparations for what they expected to be a routine conquest. Weapon systems charged, targeting computers locked onto human military installations, and boarding parties prepared for the eventual occupation of the planet. None of them noticed the almost imperceptible shift in the quantum foam around Earth. Space itself was beginning to change, reality bending around gravitational fields that shouldn't exist. On Earth, President Chen received the final report she had been waiting for. "All systems are fully operational," Dr. Vasquez announced. "We can begin active defense at any time, and our friends in the fleet above us?" Still completely unaware, their sensors can't detect anything beyond basic electromagnetic and gravitational phenomena. They have no idea what they're really facing. Chen looked around the command center. One last time. For 3 centuries, humanity had hidden their true nature from the galaxy. They had pretended to be a young, primitive species struggling with basic technology. They had watched other civilizations rise and fall, always staying hidden, always waiting. The waiting was almost over. 30 minutes until deadline, came the announcement from above. Admiral Vextar was reviewing the bombardment sequence when Science Officer Thiz suddenly straightened at her console. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy spikes from the planet, power levels that shouldn't be possible with their technology." "How massive?" Thiz checked her readings twice before responding. "Sir, the energy output I'm detecting exceeds our entire fleet's capability by a factor of 10. For the first time since arriving at Earth, Admiral Vextar felt a small chill of uncertainty. "That can't be correct. Check your instruments." "I've checked them 3 times, sir. The readings are accurate." On Earth, the countdown continued. But now it wasn't counting down to humanity's surrender. It was counting down to the moment when the galaxy would remember why they had once ruled the stars. The deadline arrived like thunder breaking across a clear sky. Admiral Vextar stood on his bridge, watching the countdown reach zero with the satisfaction of a predator about to strike. Around him, his crew waited for the order to begin bombardment. Weapon systems hummed with deadly energy. Targeting computers had locked onto human military installations, and the Admiral's finger hovered over the command authorization panel. Begin bombardment of their primary military installations, Vextar ordered. Show them what happens to species who refuse the hegemony's generous offer. The first Krillian plasma bolt lanced down from orbit like a spear of concentrated starlight. It struck a human naval base on the eastern coast of their largest continent, and the base disappeared in a flash of superheated energy. Where hundreds of human military personnel had been stationed, only a crater of molten glass remained. Target destroyed, Admiral, reported Weapons Officer Kresh. Shall we continue with the sequence? Yes. One installation every 10 minutes until they surrender. The second blast struck an airfield in what the humans called Europe. Ancient runways and primitive aircraft vanished in an instant, leaving nothing but a smoking hole in the earth. Across the planet, human governments received the message clearly. Resistance was futile. But something unexpected happened after the third bombardment. The ground began to move. Admiral, Science Officer Thys called out, her voice tight with confusion. I'm detecting massive geological activity around the bombardment sites. Geological activity? The land around the craters is shifting, rising. It looks almost like something is emerging from beneath the surface. Vextar moved to the main view screen, which now showed a live feed of the most recent bombardment site. Where there had been flat terrain around the crater, the earth was bulging upward like something huge was pushing up from below. Earthquake activity, he suggested. No, sir, the patterns are too regular, too purposeful. It's almost like... The sentence died in Thys's throat as the bulging ground suddenly split open. From beneath the earth, something rose that defied every assumption the Krillians had made about human technology. It was a structure of impossible beauty and terrifying purpose. Crystal and metal flowed together in organic curves that seemed to breathe with their own light. It rose from the ground like a flower blooming in fast motion, unfolding layers of technology that made Krillian engineering look primitive by comparison. What, in the name of the void, is that? Vextar whispered. Before anyone could answer, two more identical structures emerged from the earth near the other bombardment sites. Then more appeared across the planet, dozens of them rising from locations that had shown no signs of advanced technology just hours before. Sir, Thys reported, her voice shaking, each of those structures is generating more power than our entire fleet combined. The beautiful, organic-looking installations weren't the only surprise. Across Earth's surface, what had appeared to be natural geological formations were revealing their true nature. Mountain ranges split open to expose vast chambers filled with technology that pulsed with its own inner light. Ocean floors shifted as underwater installations the size of cities became visible for the first time in millennia. Admiral Vextar stared at the displays in growing horror. How is this possible? Our scouts said this was a primitive world. Admiral, Communications Officer Zan interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from the planet. It's President Chen. The view screen flickered, and the human leader appeared. But she was no longer in a primitive military facility. Behind her, impossible technology stretched into the distance, and her expression had changed completely. Gone was the worried, desperate look of a leader facing extinction. In its place was something that made Vextar's blood run cold. Confidence. Admiral Vextar, President Chen said, thank you for your patience during our preparations. We're ready to speak with you now. What are those installations? Where did they come from? Chen smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. They've been here all along, Admiral. We've simply stopped hiding them from you. Impossible. Our scouts surveyed this world for months. Your scouts saw exactly what we wanted them to see. Every radio transmission, every primitive technology display, every apparent limitation. All of it was carefully designed to maintain an illusion that has protected us for over 300 years. On the bridge of the Krillian flagship, the GI crew exchanged glances of growing panic. Science Officer Thys was studying her instruments with increasing alarm. "Admiral, the energy readings from the planet are now beyond our ability to measure, and I'm detecting massive objects materializing in space around us." Vextar spun to look at the tactical display, and his 4 hearts nearly stopped. Ships were appearing in space around his fleet, not primitive human vessels but craft that dwarfed even the largest Krillian dreadnoughts. They materialized from nothing, as if reality itself was being rewritten to accommodate their presence. "Where did they come from?" he demanded. "I don't know, sir. They weren't there a moment ago, and now our sensors show 47 massive vessels surrounding our fleet." President Chen's image smiled wider. "Those are our orbital defense platforms, Admiral. They've been here the entire time, just displaced slightly in time to avoid detection. We've found that most species aren't advanced enough to detect temporal manipulation." "Temporal manipulation?" Vexitar's voice cracked. "That's impossible. The energy requirements alone would require the power output of an entire planet?" Chen interrupted. "Yes, it would. Fortunately, we have that." On Earth's surface, the awakening continued. The planet's magnetic field was shifting into patterns that created a global energy grid. Ocean currents changed direction as underwater installations drew power directly from the planet's core. The aurora borealis, normally visible only at the poles, began appearing in skies across the world as Earth's atmosphere itself became part of a vast technological system. "This can't be real," Admiral Vextar muttered, watching his tactical displays show impossible power readings from every corner of the planet below. No species could hide technology this advanced. The energy signatures alone would be visible from neighboring star systems. "Oh, they are visible," President Chen replied cheerfully, "to anyone with the proper sensors. The fact that you couldn't detect them tells us quite a lot about the limitations of Krillian technology." Science Officer Thys looked up from her console with an expression of pure terror. "Admiral, the gravitational fields around those orbital platforms they're not just generating gravity, they're manipulating it, bending space-time itself. And the installations on the planet are doing something to the quantum foam," added the fleet's physicist, Dr. Vorth. "They're treating reality like a computer program that can be rewritten." Vextar turned back to the view screen where President Chen waited patiently. "What are you?" "We're human, Admiral. Just not the kind of humans you thought we were. But your technology, your capabilities, they're beyond anything in known space." "Known to whom?" Chen asked. "The Krillian hegemony has existed for what? 2,000 years? You've conquered a few dozen star systems and think you understand the galaxy. But there are civilizations out here that predate your species by millions of years." "Millions of years? Impossible. We would have encountered them." "You would have if they wanted you to. But most of the truly ancient civilizations learned long ago that sometimes the wisest course is to watch and wait, rather than interfere." Around Unar, the Krillian fleet, the massive human platforms began to move. They didn't use any visible propulsion system. They simply shifted position as if the laws of physics were politely stepping aside to accommodate them. "Admiral," Weapons Officer Kresh called out, "our targeting systems can't lock onto the human vessels. They're generating some kind of field that deflects our sensors." "What about the installations on the planet?" "Same problem, sir. It's like they exist in normal space, but our weapons can't see them properly." President Chen's expression became more serious. "Admiral Vextar, you and your fleet have a choice to make. You came here expecting to conquer a primitive world and enslave its population. Instead, you've discovered that this world is under the protection of a civilization that your people could never hope to match." "You're bluffing," Vextar said, but his voice lacked conviction. "If you had this kind of power, why hide it? Why pretend to be primitive?" "Because, Admiral, with great power comes great responsibility. We learned long ago that openly displaying our capabilities leads to 2 responses from younger species. Either they worship us as gods, or they unite against us out of fear. Neither outcome helps anyone develop into their full potential." "So you hide in the shadows like cowards?" Chen's expression hardened. We maintain a careful watch over the galaxy's development, intervening only when necessary to prevent catastrophic outcomes. The Krillian hegemony's expansion has been creating exactly such a catastrophic outcome. On the tactical displays, more human installations were revealing themselves across Earth's surface. The planet was transforming before their eyes from a simple world to something that looked like a vast, living machine. "Admiral," Dr. Vorth called out, "I'm detecting changes in the planet's core. They appear to be using their star's gravity well as some kind of massive energy focusing system." "Their star?" Vextar looked at the readings in horror. "They're manipulating stellar mechanics?" "It appears so, sir. The gravitational fields they're generating are extending all the way to their sun." President Chen nodded approvingly. "Very good, Doctor. Yes, our installations can draw power directly from Sol when needed. It's quite efficient, really." The awakening was complete. Earth no longer looked like a primitive world with a few scattered cities and basic technology. It looked like what it truly was: a fortress world of unimaginable power, hidden in plain sight for centuries while its guardians watched over a galaxy that had no idea they existed. Admiral Vextar stared at the transformed planet and realized that everything he thought he knew about the galaxy was wrong. Admiral Vextar's world crumbled in the space between one heartbeat and the next. The truth hit him like a physical blow as the pieces fell into place with terrifying clarity. The impossible technology, the casual manipulation of space-time, the power systems that drew energy from stellar cores, the orbital platforms that treated physics like a set of suggestions rather than laws. "You're the first empire," he whispered. President Chen's expression shifted to something that might have been approval mixed with sadness. "Very good, Admiral. Yes, humanity is what remains of the civilization your people call the First Empire." The bridge of the Krillian flagship fell into absolute silence. Every member of the crew knew the stories. Every child in Krillian space grew up hearing tales of the legendary First Empire, the mysterious civilization that had ruled the galaxy millions of years before the Krillians had even discovered fire. "But that's impossible," Science Officer Thys breathed. "The First Empire vanished without a trace. There are no survivors, no remnants, no evidence they even existed except for the stories passed down through 1,000 species." "Oh, there's evidence," Chen replied. "You're looking at it. Every inhabitable world in this galaxy bears traces of First Empire terraforming. Every species that achieved sentience did so because we carefully guided their evolution. The very fact that you can breathe the same atmosphere as dozens of other species isn't coincidence. It's design." Dr. Vorth, the fleet's physicist, was frantically consulting his databases. The legends say the First Empire could reshape worlds. With a thought, travel between galaxies as easily as walking between rooms, and command forces that could move stars themselves. "The legends are mostly accurate," Chen confirmed, "though we prefer to think of it as advanced engineering rather than magic." Admiral Vextar struggled to process what he was hearing. The First Empire was supposed to be ancient history, a mythical, golden age that existed before recorded time. But here was its heir, sitting calmly in a command center that looked like it could control the fundamental forces of the universe. "If you're truly the First Empire," he said slowly, "then why did you disappear? Why did you abandon the galaxy?" Chen's expression grew somber. "We didn't abandon it, Admiral. We were driven from it." "Driven from it? By whom? What force could possibly threaten the First Empire?" "Not a force from this galaxy. Something from the void between galaxies, entities that exist in the spaces where light has never traveled. We called them the Dark Tide, though that's hardly an adequate description for beings that treat matter and energy as playthings." The view screen behind Chen shifted to display images that made every Krillian on the bridge recoil in instinctive horror. Dark shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, forms that hurt to look at directly. And behind them, a glimpse of something vast and hungry that stretched across the emptiness between stars. "The war lasted for 10 million years," Chen continued. "We held them back, but at a cost. Entire star systems were consumed. Billions of our people died, and whole sectors of the galaxy became uninhabitable. In the end, We realized that the only way to defeat them was to make them think they had won. You retreated? We sacrificed everything to create the ultimate deception. Our visible empire fell. Our great works crumbled and our people scattered to hidden worlds like Earth. To all external observation, the first empire had been destroyed. But in reality, we had simply gone into hiding, waiting, and preparing for their inevitable return. Admiral Vextar felt as though reality was shifting around him. Return? Are you saying these entities are coming back? They never left, Admiral. They've been sleeping in the dark spaces between galaxies, growing stronger, waiting for the galaxy to rebuild itself into something worth consuming again. Our long-range sensors have been tracking their movements for centuries. They're stirring, and they'll be fully awake within the next few decades. The implications crashed over Vextar like a tide of ice water. You've been watching us, all of us, every species in the galaxy. We've been protecting you, Chen corrected. Do you think it's coincidence that most species develop along similar lines, that wars between star-faring civilizations tend to end in stalemates rather than total annihilation? We've been carefully guiding galactic development, ensuring that when the dark tide returns, the younger species will be strong enough to help us fight them. Science Officer Theiss looked up from her instruments with the expression of dawning understanding. The stability of hyperspace lanes, the distribution of habitable worlds, the way certain technologies seem to develop naturally across multiple species, it's all been managed. Very good, Chen nodded. And hyperspace navigation only works because we maintain the quantum beacons that keep those dimensions stable. Habitable worlds exist because we terraformed them millions of years ago, and certain technologies develop naturally because we've been carefully seeding the necessary knowledge into your cultures when you're ready for it. But why? Vextar demanded. Why not simply reveal yourselves and unite the galaxy openly? Because unity imposed from above is brittle and temporary. We tried that approach during our original empire, and it left us vulnerable when the dark tide attacked. This time, we needed the galaxy species to develop their own strength, their own unity, their own reasons to fight for survival. The Admiral looked around his bridge, seeing his crew's faces reflected in the tactical displays. Every one of them wore the same expression of overwhelming realization. The hegemony, he said, slowly. Our expansion, our conquests, we were disrupting your plan. The Krillian hegemony represents exactly the kind of forced unity that doesn't work in the long term, Chen confirmed. Conquering species and enslaving them creates weakness, not strength. When the dark tide arrives, they'll consume enslaved populations as easily as they consume their masters. So you revealed yourselves to stop us. We revealed ourselves because the time for hiding is almost over. The dark tide is stirring and the galaxy needs to begin preparing for what's coming. That preparation can't happen while civilizations are busy conquering each other. Admiral Vextar stared at the transformed Earth on his displays. What had looked like a simple planet now revealed itself as a fortress world beyond imagination. Every mountain range housed defensive installations, every ocean current powered massive energy systems, and the planet's magnetic field had become a weapon that could focus stellar radiation into beams capable of sterilizing entire star systems. This world, he said, it's not your homeworld, is it? Earth is humanity's final refuge, Admiral. When the first empire fell, the survivors scattered to 1,000 hidden worlds. But Earth is special. It's where we made our last stand against the Dark Tide's advanced scouts. The entire planet was converted into a defensive installation, then hidden in time and space until the moment we would need it again. Dr. Vorth was studying readings from the planet's surface with increasing amazement. The energy patterns, the quantum resonance fields. This entire world is one massive weapon system. Among other things, Chen replied. Earth serves as our communications hub, our primary manufacturing center, and the central command point for our hidden installations throughout the galaxy. What you see here today is just the beginning of what we're capable of. How many worlds like this do you have? That's classified information, Admiral. Let's just say that Earth isn't unique. The tactical display suddenly chimed with new contacts. More ships were appearing throughout the star system. not materializing from temporal displacement like the orbital platforms, but dropping out of hyperspace in formations that spoke of careful planning and overwhelming force. "Admiral," Communications Officer Zan reported, "we're receiving identification signals from the new arrivals. They're from species across the galaxy: Altarian Republic, Centauri Federation, the Vegan Commonwealth, even the Andromedans. That's impossible. Those civilizations are thousands of light years away. Some of them are barely capable of interstellar travel." President Chen smiled. "Admiral, meet the real galactic community. The one that's been quietly preparing for this moment while you've been busy playing conqueror." The view screen split to show multiple images, representatives from dozens of species, all of them transmitting from what appeared to be highly advanced command centers. "President Chen," said a being that looked like a crystalline tree, "all Republic fleets report ready for Operation Awakening. Federation forces are in position," added what appeared to be a sentient cloud of gas. "Our Titan-class vessels have charged their Nova cannons. The Commonwealth stands ready," declared a creature that resembled a mobile plant. "Our bioships are hungry for Krillian targets." Admiral Vextar listened to the reports with growing horror. Species he had dismissed as primitive or irrelevant were revealing themselves as advanced civilizations with military capabilities that rivaled or exceeded his own. "You've all been in contact," he realized. "This entire time, while we thought we were the dominant power in the galaxy, you've been coordinating against us. Not against you specifically," Chen clarified. "Against the kind of expansion through conquest philosophy that weakens the galaxy when it needs to be strong. The Krillian hegemony was simply the most recent example. But our intelligence networks, our scouts, our cultural analysis, how did we miss all of this? Because you saw what you wanted to see, Admiral. You looked at other species and judged them by your own standards. When you saw simple technology, you assumed simple minds. When you encountered peaceful civilizations, you assumed weakness. You never considered that some species might choose to appear less advanced than they really were." The truth was staggering in its implications. The galaxy wasn't a collection of primitive species waiting to be conquered by whoever developed the best weapons first. It was a carefully managed community of civilizations working together under the guidance of humanity's ancient empire, all preparing for a threat that dwarfed any territorial dispute. Admiral Vextar looked at his crew, seeing his own realization reflected in their faces. Everything they had believed about the galaxy, about their place in it, about their destiny as conquerors, was built on a foundation of lies and assumptions. The Krillian hegemony wasn't the rising power they thought they were. They were children playing with toys in a universe run by gods. What happened next changed the course of galactic history forever. Admiral Vexitar stared at the transformed Earth, at the impossible fleet surrounding his ships, at the representatives of civilizations he had thought primitive, and felt something break inside his mind. The careful logic that had guided him through 3 centuries of successful conquests crumbled under the weight of revelations too massive to process. "No," he whispered, then louder. "No, this is impossible." "Admiral," Science Officer Thys said quietly, "our sensors confirm everything they're showing us. The power readings, the technology, the fleet formations. It's all real." But Vextar was beyond listening to reason. His entire worldview, his species' destiny, their rightful place as masters of the galaxy, all of it was being torn away by a species they had dismissed as primitive insects. "This is a trick," he shouted at President Chen's image. "Some kind of holographic deception. Krillians don't surrender to inferior species." Chen's expression shifted from patient explanation to something harder and infinitely more dangerous. "Admiral Vextar," she said slowly, "I was hoping we could resolve this situation peacefully, but it seems you need a more direct demonstration of what you're truly facing." "Demonstration? You think your light show impresses us? We are Krillians. We have conquered 17 star systems. We bow to no one." "Then let me show you why you should." The change began subtly. Earth's magnetic field, already shifted into impossible patterns, began to pulse with increasing intensity. The aurora that had appeared in skies across the planet grew brighter, spreading until the entire atmosphere glowed with controlled energy. "Admiral," Dr. Vorth called out in alarm, "the planet's gravitational field is fluctuating." "No, not fluctuating. It's being actively manipulated." On the main view screen, Earth itself began to change. The planet's rotation slowed, then stopped completely. Clouds froze in place as the atmosphere locked into stasis. Ocean tides halted mid-cycle as gravitational forces came under direct control. "They're treating an entire planet like a machine," this whispered. "They're controlling planetary mechanics as easily as we control our ship's engines." But that was only the beginning. The moon began to move. Luna, Earth's ancient satellite, shifted from its orbital path with ponderous inevitability. As it moved, its surface began to change. What had appeared to be impact craters revealed themselves as massive weapon emplacements. The lunar seas, those dark patches visible from Earth, opened like gigantic flowers to expose technology that defied comprehension. "Dear Void," breathed Weapons Officer Kresh, "their moon is a weapons platform." "Not just a weapons platform," President Chen corrected. "Luna is our primary fortress, built during the war against the Dark Tide. Every crater you see is a gun emplacement. Every mountain is a shield generator. The entire moon is one massive weapon." But Earth's moon was not alone in its transformation. Throughout the solar system, asteroids began to move. What had appeared to be random space debris revealed itself as a vast network of automated defense stations. The asteroid belt reorganized itself into perfect geometric formations, each rock bristling with weapons that had been hidden for millennia. "They've weaponized an entire star system," Admiral Vextar said, his voice hollow with disbelief. "This is what a First Empire defensive installation looks like when fully activated," Chen replied. "But we're just getting started." The sun began to dim. Sol, the star that had burned steadily for billions of years, started to fade as impossible forces drew energy directly from its core. That energy flowed along paths invisible to normal sensors, channeled through gravitational lenses and quantum conduits to power systems that operated on scales beyond Krillian understanding. "They're using their star as a power source," Dr. Vorth reported, his voice shaking. "Not just solar collection, they're drawing energy directly from nuclear fusion reactions in the stellar core." "Admiral," Theiss added, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the system. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid, they're all connected to the same power grid." The outer planets of Sol system began to move into alignment, their orbits shifting with mechanical precision. Jupiter's great red spot revealed itself as a massive atmospheric processor, converting the planet's entire gas envelope into a focusing lens for energies that could sterilize entire solar systems. Saturn's rings spread wide, each particle taking position in a formation that turned the entire ring system into a galaxy-spanning sensor array. "This is impossible," Vextar muttered. "No species could have technology this advanced. You'd need to control fundamental forces, manipulate matter at the quantum level, treat space and time like construction materials." "Yes," Chen agreed simply. "You would." And then Earth's fury truly unleashed itself. The first demonstration was gentle by First Empire standards. A single beam of coherent energy, no wider than a human hair, lanced out from Earth's surface and touched the hull of the Krillian flagship. The beam lasted less than a microsecond and carried barely enough energy to light a small room. It cut through the flagship's shields, armor, and hull as if they were made of paper. The beam passed completely through the ship, exiting on the far side and continuing into space without losing coherence. Only the precision targeting prevented it from doing any real damage. It had passed through empty corridors and maintenance shafts, carefully avoiding any vital systems or crew areas. "How?" Vexitar whispered, staring at the perfectly circular hole that now ran through his ship from bow to stern. "We edit matter at the quantum level," Chen explained. "That beam didn't destroy your hull, it simply convinced the atoms that they wanted to be somewhere else." The second demonstration was less gentle. One of the smaller Krillian destroyers, positioned at the edge of the fleet formation, suddenly found itself surrounded by a shimmering field of energy. The ship's crew had barely enough time to register what was happening before their vessel began to change. The destroyer's hull flowed like liquid metal, reshaping itself into a perfect sphere. Its weapon systems merged and compressed until they became a single concentrated point of energy. Its propulsion system transformed into something that operated on principles unknown to Krillian science. "What have you done?" Vextar demanded. "We've improved your ship," Chen replied. "That vessel now has defensive capabilities beyond anything in your fleet, propulsion systems that can cross the galaxy in minutes, and weapons that could destroy planets. Its crew is unharmed and perfectly safe inside. You just rewrote an entire starship." It seemed more instructive than simply destroying it. The third demonstration involved space itself. A section of empty void near the Krillian fleet simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not moved. It was edited out of reality as casually as deleting text from a document. The gravitational effects of the missing space created a lens that focused background cosmic radiation into patterns that spelled out messages in perfect Krillian script. Surrender appeared first, written in letters made of bent starlight. "This is your final warning," followed, composed of realigned gamma rays. "We do not wish to harm you," concluded the display, crafted from the cosmic microwave background itself. Admiral Vextar stared at messages written in the fundamental structure of the universe and realized that his understanding of reality had been hopelessly, pathetically inadequate. "The choice is yours, Admiral," President Chen said, her image appearing calm and patient despite the awesome displays of power surrounding them. "The Krillian hegemony can surrender peacefully and join the galactic community as equals, or we can demonstrate additional capabilities until you understand the futility of resistance." "And if we choose to fight?" Chen's expression grew sad. "Admiral, your entire fleet carries enough firepower to sterilize the surfaces of a dozen worlds. That's impressive by galactic standards, but the energy contained in Earth's defensive systems alone exceeds the total output of your sun by a factor of millions. Fighting us would be like insects declaring war on a hurricane. You're bluffing. No one could have that kind of power." "Show him Luna's primary weapon," came a voice from off-screen. The moon's surface began to glow with increasing intensity. Deep within its core, machinery that had been built when the galaxy was young began to spin up to operational levels. The lunar surface cracked along geometric lines as the entire moon revealed its true nature. Not a natural satellite, but a constructed fortress designed to defend against threats that could consume entire galaxies. "Luna's primary weapon system," Chen explained, "draws power from the zero-point field itself. It can fire projectiles that travel faster than light, ignore physical barriers, and carry enough energy to ignite gas giants into new stars. It has a maximum range limited only by the expansion of the universe itself. One shot from that weapon," added Dr. Vasquez, visible now behind President Chen, "could destroy every ship in your fleet simultaneously, regardless of their position in space. The projectile would simply edit them out of existence across multiple dimensions." Admiral Vextar looked around his bridge. His crew stared back at him with expressions of absolute terror mixed with awe. They had come here expecting to conquer a primitive world. Instead, they had discovered that they were children confronting beings who could rewrite the laws of physics on a whim. What do you want from us?" he asked finally. "We want peace, Admiral. We want the Krillian hegemony to stop conquering other species and join the galactic community as partners rather than masters. We want your people to help us prepare for the real threat that's coming." "The Dark Tide." "The Dark Tide," Chen confirmed. "They're stirring in the void between galaxies, Admiral. When they fully awaken, every species in this galaxy will need to work together to have any hope of survival. Civilizations divided by conquest and slavery will fall easily. United civilizations with every species contributing their unique strengths will have a chance." Vexitar looked at the displays showing the transformed solar system. Earth burned with controlled stellar fire. Its moon had become a weapon that could destroy fleets across interstellar distances. The other planets moved, in patterns that suggested they could be positioned anywhere in the galaxy at need. This wasn't just a defensive installation. It was a fortress that could protect an entire galaxy. If we surrender, he said slowly, what happens to the hegemony? The hegemony ends, Chen replied, but the Krillian people don't. You'll be offered places in the galactic community based on your abilities and interests, not your conquest record. Your military expertise will be valuable in preparing defenses against the dark tide. Your administrative skills will help coordinate multi-species cooperation. Your explorers will help map the hidden installations we've placed throughout the galaxy. And if we refuse? President Chen looked directly at him, and for the first time, Admiral Vextar saw the true depth of power behind her human features. She wasn't just a political leader of a primitive species. She was the heir to an empire that had once ruled 1,000,000 stars, and in her eyes, he could see the weight of cosmic responsibility. If you refuse, Admiral, then the galaxy will defend itself without Krillian help. Your fleets will be disabled, your conquered worlds will be freed, and your people will be relocated to a place where they can't threaten others. We prefer cooperation, but we will enforce peace if necessary. The choice was no choice at all. Admiral Vextar looked around his bridge one final time, then spoke the words that ended the Krillian hegemony forever. We surrender. Earth's fury subsided as quickly as it had appeared. The sun resumed its normal brightness. The planets moved back to their natural orbits. The weapons installations faded back into apparent dormancy. But nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. Humanity had revealed itself, and the age of conquest was over.